All right, Andreas, thank you for being on the call. So just to give you a little background, Hire Llama has started a podcast where we're talking to, decision makers, directors, people that hire, or as well as, are in the process of hiring. So I know you have a lot of experience with, European startups. So you have a unique point of view into the startup space in the Americas, Europe, and especially in your own sector, which is hospitality and restaurants right now. So, we'd love for you to talk to us about that, and let's get started.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. It is certainly a conversation very interesting to have. I think this is a conversation that only 5 weeks ago would have been different. And from what it is today, and let's find out what this conversation would be like in 5 weeks from now, as COVID is rapidly changing everything. But if we just want to sort of push COVID aside for the time being, for us as an organization, smart hiring is absolutely key to reaching our own goals. Maybe to recap a little bit, I run Point in the US for Metro AG. We're one of the world's largest food and hospitality wholesalers, a multinational with almost 700 stores in 24 countries, another 10 countries just for food service delivery. We essentially service about 16 million small business operators, restaurants, cafe shops, bodegas, caterers, and that is, of course, because of COVID, a business that is under intense pressure. And so for us, as we help our customers help feed the world, it is instrumental, or it's important for us to make sure that the supply chain operates as it should, and that we can service our customers to the degree that they still have customers currently. And that means hiring and quality staff is top of mind.
So you mentioned that you're the liaison for the Americas. So you are already a remote employee. How has COVID-19 changed your work life, or how you manage things right now?
It's an interesting question, because as an organization, we have always sort of been in a distributed remote work environment. This is not new to us. And so I guess it helps us to acclimate a little better. Maybe I should explain, I am inside Metro, I'm supporting our downstream customer digital services practice. Essentially, we're helping millions of independent restaurant operators not just shop at our stores, but also we help them with digital services on-premise, ability to use digital to generate more revenue or reduce operating costs on the system. And that is a software shop that we built in-house inside Metro. And so in a way, as a startup ourselves, remote and distributed working environments are relatively normal. Not to the extent that we have it now. It's certainly pushing things to the limit, but it seems to be working reasonably well.
So, since you have a really large team, how much of your team has gone remote now in Europe?
All of it. So
all of it.
We're roughly 200 folks across several cities and 3 or 4 countries. Mm-hmm. And so in many ways, we're able to continue our roadmap, our product built out, that is still working on this without any interruption. Obviously, while we've not tested it, how long can you do this, right? It worked for the first 4 weeks. Would this scale to 24 weeks? We don't know. We'll find out.
So as a remote veteran, how has your team taken remote work? Has there been any hiccups? Have you had any communication issues? Or is there anything drastically changed since they've gone remote?
In many ways, I'm finding old rituals in the physical world porting into the digital world. Right? You still have you're still dealing with individuals with unique characters. You're still dealing with folks that are looking to get a job done and trying to motivate others to come on board and support. So that's not going away, regardless whether you have eye-to-eye contact with them, or you're physically in the same room with them, or you're in a virtual environment. But what I should say is our business needs have not changed. That's one thing. And the fact that we have distributed network of contacts, sort of an internal network of team members to help execute on those business demands, that hasn't changed. I liken this to microservices. If you look at microservices as a software development framework, right? You split up an application into smaller work units, and you connect those units to achieve a greater goal. So in many ways, what we're doing is we're like microservices software. We're individuals looking to support a particular business need. We continue to find team members wherever they might be at the time and connect with them. Zoom is great, Confluence is great, Slack is great. I think those are our three primary channels that we're using, and it works well. It really does.
Wow, that's actually a pretty good. So you've had a good experience with your whole team. Now, how about for you by yourself? Like your mental health, how is it? How have you been feeling? It's been like 5 weeks at least.
Right, exactly. I never thought that I would start to look forward to sort of serendipitous water cooler talk, right? That doesn't exist anymore right now. And so the longer this goes on, the more I'm thinking, it was great conversation, cool conversation to have with people in the physical realm. So that I start to miss that a little bit, right? The serendipitous water cooler talk. There is a bit of remote worker loneliness, I think, that creeps in. So yeah, you gotta start dealing with that in some respect. On the upside, I think as an individual in this situation, a big difference is kids versus no kids. If you have kids around and they are typically not inclined to be overly patient, that makes it a little different. We don't have kids, so that's one thing. You stay relatively structured. That's one thing. And then secondly, and that's probably the best or the worst thing, however you like to look at this, is you have unbelievable proximity to a kitchen, meaning you're constantly in front of food. That's something else I find as a sort of a common theme when it comes to remote working. So I gotta make sure I stay off out of the way.
Are you taking any proactive measures to like do meditation or talk to like a therapist or use one of those services that gives you that combats loneliness?
No, not really. But we did start YouTube yoga classes. Yes.
Really?
So yoga was one of my New Year, predictions. Would I do it? Yes or no? And it turns out COVID actually had me do it. COVID got me to finally sort of come down and use yoga to decompress, which is nice.
They're thinking that this is going to stay until at least May. Some people are saying probably September, or other people are saying until we get a vaccine. Let's say on an optimistic side, we go back to work on May 15. How do you think this is going to change the culture at your company and the way that you work with, your customers or your partners?
I don't think it's going to change the fundamental culture of the company. I would anticipate that we're possibly going to rely just a tad more on remote office work than we have in the past. So again, it wasn't new to us. We already knew how to work in a distributed environment. It's very project oriented and therefore relatively structured. I think what we're going through right now is better preparing us for a post-COVID scenario And who knows, it might just be, in some instances, more effective to work from home than to ask people to travel physically to a particular office location. You know, it's something that we're certainly, that we need to test, but it's relatively quantifiable. You can relatively easily quantify performance in sort of an A/B side testing environment. Are teams more performing, better performing in a physical environment versus a remote environment? Let's find out. Let's find out. Yeah.
So that's a good point. Effectiveness. Before, if you're in an office, there's office cooler talk. There's a lot of team meetings. Um, how do you replace that part of like the office life with remote?
I don't think you do. Not truly. Not in a demonstrable sense. I mean, I've been thinking about this as I've been staring at the screen now for many times over the last 4 weeks. I think that we're all acclimating to this new format. So to me, it's a little bit like, when we had to move from a BlackBerry to an Apple, and I found myself complaining about the Apple doesn't work. The iPhone is too complicated. Well, all it took was really my being pushed to spend enough time with it to acclimate to the new feature sets, right? What button to push to get where, for what purpose. So with remote office under COVID, same thing. I was pushed to learn the format, to get sort of jiggy with Zoom in a sense, and that's happening. So we're past that point, and I would imagine that going forward, we have that long tail of workers, mine included, that were not really in favor of video conferencing. Now using it and turning it on and off like it was water coming out of a faucet. It's just normal. So you do it. So I like that. I think that's a good thing. And if it gets us as a company to support our customers better, faster, at lower cost, sure.
All right. So the next question kind of would be, what technology are you using right now? Like, are you doing all your video calls with like your laptop, your iPad? Do you have like your own setup for conferences now?
From my end, I try to keep this manageable and simple, yet effective, if that's the way to go. So really, I'm trying to keep my video conferencing to my primary laptop. I try not to take these calls on a smaller screen, i.e. an iPad or iPhone. Clearly, I'm on an Apple system, so I'm answering the system from an Apple OS perspective. I have started using earphones, headsets, essentially the Apple version of it. And for some of the stuff, I'm actually using big, bulky headsets. Depending on whether I want to blank out surround sound completely, but mostly I just use the speaker function on the laptop. So I try to keep it simple. One device, large screen. If I can avoid it, no headset or earbuds, and mostly Zoom. And that's simply because that's essentially what most people seem to dictate. We internally use Microsoft Teams as well. So it's switching between Zoom and Microsoft Teams as a platform, and use Slack and WhatsApp just to connect with people ahead of sessions.
Okay. And as a I would say an internal startup for Metro, are you guys like still hiring now or has hiring been completely paused, or what's happening there?
So we're currently not hiring, but that is not as a result of COVID. That is simply because we were staffed properly at the time when all this started. What we are doing, we do have a mix of FTEs, full-time employees, and external developers. That hasn't changed. I don't have enough sort of insights to know, whether we switched on the balance of the two. But from what I see is we're relatively stable with what we're looking to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't see opportunities coming up, right? COVID has created a new employment market situation, and it is hasn't gone unnoticed that there's an employment market now that lets you possibly buy talent at a lower cost, and that's something that we need to take a look at going forward.
So that's really interesting that you're saying that this the pandemic has created, I guess, lower cost, like you said, talent. And what else do you think is going to happen if it continues and you could get talent from, a different country at a lower cost than from, your native country, where there's cost of living is higher, you have to pay insurance. Do you see that dynamically changing, or will you always require to have someone on site, or on site, like in the same country, remote?
Mm-hmm. I don't see the principal hiring decisions changing, which is it's a combination of best fit FTEs and outsourced developer support. Whether I can buy offshoring at a lower price today, and that price might go up again tomorrow, we don't know. I would think that there'll be some readjustment again in the marketplace once things normalize. So I don't think that cost benefit is scales and will sort of self-correct at some point. So it continues to be really about the right talent, right? The right offshoring talent, because you're not buying necessarily commoditized services, right? If you're looking for AI folks are highly specialized in what they do. They still command the same price, I would imagine. So there's downward pressure more on the commoditized sort of tech stack development versus the higher end of the market.
Okay. And last question, do you see any, as it continues on from, week 4, week 5, do you see any more challenges coming up or anything that you think you might hit soon?
What is changing dramatically is how our customers are conducting business. It's what I call the survive and thrive era, right? For our customers, our customers are primarily independent mom and pop restaurant owners and small restaurant groups, hotel operators, caterers, bodega owners, small retailers in 24 countries. And their business is rapidly, it's rapidly changing. It's undergoing tremendous pressure. The question for us is, as we're a software development team providing these customers with software solutions to run their business, if their business changes, what does that mean to our tech stack, right? If their business changes, if they are starting to look for new ways to generate a revenue, then this has got to have an impact on the back-end technology that they need to service that market. I'll give you an example. As independent restaurants have started selling direct to consumers in much more force than they have in the past, pickup, delivery, as they're starting to get into groceries, as they're getting into meal kits and prepared foods, all of a sudden it's no longer that linear. A wholesaler sells to a restaurant sells to a guest. That guest now is in many places and has more options to buy from me as a restaurant. What does that mean to the tech stack? And then conversely, what does that mean to our hiring practices as we need new talent to service that new tech stack demand?
Okay. Awesome, Andreas. Well, thank you again for taking your time to join our podcast.
Sure.
I think that's all we got.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the opportunity. And thanks for setting up Hire Llama. I think you guys are doing a terrific job. I know we've used it in the past. Just keep it up. Good stuff.
Thank you. Awesome.